Duke Callum Voss arrived at the Whitmore house after a long journey, expecting one thing: an orderly home, a prepared family, suitable candidates. He found what he expected, and he also found what he did not expect. The Whitmore house had been preparing for weeks, and this was not an exaggeration, it was real. Mrs. Agatha Whitmore woke up every morning with a list: which room would be arranged how, which meal would be served on which day, what Cecily would wear, how Arabella would do her hair. Every detail had been considered, everything was in its place. Because Duke Callum Voss was not just wealthy, he was one of the richest young dukes in England. He was unmarried, and he had come to evaluate the Whitmore family. Agatha had not waited years for this opportunity, but she had prepared for years. A subtle difference, and an important one.
When the Duke arrived, the drawing room was perfect. Cecily stood on the left, pale blue, lace on her shoulders, a pearl necklace from her mother around her neck. Arabella on the right, darker, more dramatic, diamond earrings. Both were beautiful, both were smiling, both were exactly as they should be. Callum entered, looked, and evaluated. Agatha made the introduction in that sweet, calculated tone. "You must have heard of my daughters," she said, "Cecily and Arabella. They have prepared themselves greatly for this visit." Callum inclined his head, polite, distant. He knew this kind of presentation. He had received it for years. Families prepared, daughters were presented, he evaluated. The procedure was clear, and the procedure was boring. But boring was safe, and safe was sufficient. At least, that was what he thought. At that exact moment, the kitchen door opened. The sound was small, a faint creak of the hinge, footsteps on wood, but the room was silent, and every sound grew in silence. Callum turned. A young woman, 22 perhaps, 23, carrying a large tray, a tea set, small plates, carefully arranged. A flower stain on her apron, on the left. She had not noticed it. Her hair was tied up, but a few strands had escaped. Her dress was simple, very simple, a kitchen dress. She entered, placed the tray on the table without making noise, and turned, and saw Callum. They looked at each other. Callum's first thought was evaluation, automatic, habitual. Then the evaluation froze, because the expression on this woman's face was not what he expected. No shame, no rush, no apologetic look. She was simply looking, straight and calm and without calculation, as if Callum's presence was not a surprise, and even if it was, it did not matter much.
Callum spoke, his voice coming out cold, slightly sharp, that habit. "Who is this?" he said. The room froze. Agatha's smile was the first to stiffen. Cecily and Arabella's eyes shifted toward each other. The maid froze in the doorway. The woman, the one with the tray, the apron, the loose hair, looked at Callum. 1 second. 2 seconds. Nothing in her face changed. She turned, walked toward the kitchen door, put her hand on it, and paused. She did not turn back, but she spoke, her voice flat. Neither angry nor broken, just flat. "Mara Whitmore," she said. "A daughter of this house." The door closed. Silence remained. Agatha recovered first, a smile without laughter. "Forgive me," she said. "Mara sometimes—" Callum did not listen. He was looking at the door, closed, ordinary, wooden. But there was something in it. Something small and unsettling and impossible to name. That woman had not turned back, had not apologized, had not been ashamed, had not smiled, had not explained. She had only said her name, and left. Callum had met many people over the years. Most wanted something from him: money, status, approval, attention, and most hid that desire under something. This woman wanted nothing. That was strange, and strange things usually disturbed Callum. This time the disturbance felt different. That night he sat in his room and thought, "Who is this?" He heard his own voice, cold, sharp, habitual. And for the first time, he did not like that voice. He woke early in the morning and looked out his window into the garden. There was a woman there. No apron this time, but the same simple dress, walking among the flowers. Not gathering anything, not doing anything, just walking. Callum watched. At one point she stopped, lifted her head, and looked at the sky, long and calm, in no hurry. Callum recognized that look. It was the look of people tired of something, people who do not complain, do not seek solutions, just take a breath for a moment. He had seen that look in the mirror. For different reasons, but the same look. He went downstairs.
Mara Whitmore woke early in the mornings, not by choice, but by habit. Years of habit. To wake before the house, to have a few minutes alone in the cold quiet of the kitchen, to breathe before the rest of the day began. That morning, she had gone out to the garden for no reason, just because the air was cold and cold air scattered thoughts, and sometimes Mara needed her thoughts to scatter. When she returned, she entered through the kitchen door, as she always did, and stopped. He was there, at the garden door, the man who had arrived the previous evening, Duke Callum Voss, whose name Agatha had been saying for weeks in excited whispers while arranging her plans. Mara looked. He looked back. Mara entered, took her apron, and began to make tea. The man stepped inside. She heard it, his steps, the sound of the door, and turned. He was in the kitchen. Duke Callum Voss, one of the wealthiest men in England, standing in front of the kitchen table. It was a strange sight. "You can sit," Mara said, her voice neutral, neither inviting nor cold. Callum sat, as if he had not expected the offer, but he sat. Mara poured tea, 2 cups, and placed the second in front of Callum. Callum looked at the cup, then at Mara. "Yesterday," he said, "for hearing what I said." Mara raised her hand, a small movement. "It doesn't matter," she said. Callum wanted to continue. Mara spoke again, this time more clearly. "It truly doesn't matter. I'm used to it." Callum took that sentence in and let it settle. Used to it. 2 words, but there was a lifetime in them. The hierarchy in the Whitmore house was clear. Agatha was at the top, always, in everything. The house was hers, not technically, but in practice. Before Robert Whitmore died, he had arranged everything, debts, deeds, the will. The result favored Agatha. There was a small inheritance from Mara's mother, but it was under Agatha's control until Mara turned 25. 3 more years. Cecily and Arabella were in the middle, Agatha's daughters, her real daughters, loved and indulged and considered worthy of the best of everything. They were good girls, actually. Mara could say that. They had been raised exactly as Agatha wanted. No more, no less. Mara was at the bottom. This was not official. Nothing was official in the Whitmore house. Everything was built on implication and habit. Mara served because she was helpful. Mara worked in the kitchen because she liked working with her hands. Mara did not wear the finest dresses because she was modest. Agatha used these words with a smile, gently. Mara had stopped objecting years ago, because objecting did not work. Agatha framed every objection, and there was no stepping outside that frame. Instead, Mara counted. 3 years, 25, the inheritance. And then, whatever happened, she would stand on her own feet. The plan was simple, and Mara liked simple plans. The Duke's arrival did not threaten the plan. At least, that was what she thought at first. Agatha's game was clear. Cecily or Arabella would charm the Duke, there would be a marriage, the family would be saved. Mara was not part of this game and did not want to be. Agatha did not want her to be either. On that, they agreed. The problem was this. Callum Voss was sitting at the kitchen table and had not left before finishing his tea. "What were you reading yesterday?" he asked. Mara was surprised. "Yesterday?" "In the garden," said Callum. "Early morning. You had a book in your hand." Mara thought. "Tacitus," she said. "Agricola." Callum looked at her. In Latin. Mara nodded. My father taught me when I was a child, Latin and French. Callum said nothing, but something in his face had changed. That indifference had cracked slightly. Mara did not elaborate, did not say he taught me just to read, did not make unnecessary explanations. She simply stopped. Callum stopped. They drank tea in silence, and that silence, Mara would later think, did not belong in that house. In that house, every silence was filled with something. Agatha filled it, Cecily filled it, Arabella filled it. This silence was not filled. And because it was not filled, it was different. That afternoon, Agatha called Mara into the small room and closed the door. Agatha was sitting. Mara stood. She had not been invited to sit. This was a familiar arrangement. Agatha spoke, her voice as sweet as always, but underneath as hard as always. The Duke is a guest here, she said, and while he is here, we do not want to attract attention. Do you understand, Mara? Mara understood, literally understood. Yes, she said. Agatha continued, Entering from the kitchen yesterday was inappropriate. In the coming days such things will not happen. You will use the back entrance. Mara looked at her. The back entrance, Agatha repeated, and smiled. Isn't it more practical? You already work on the kitchen side. Mara said nothing. Agatha stood. The meeting was over. Mara turned and left. She stopped in the corridor, leaned against the wall for 1 second, 2 seconds, then straightened and continued. 3 years. Just 3 years. That evening at dinner, Mara served. Callum watched this. Agatha was speaking, describing Cecily's talents, Arabella's knowledge of languages, Cecily smiling, Arabella showing modesty, while Mara placed the plates, took them away, returned. Callum looked once, just as Mara was stepping back from the table, brief and attentive. Mara felt it, but ignored it. She returned to the kitchen and closed the door. Callum remained at the table, holding his fork, listening to Agatha speak, but his mind was on the door. That closed, ordinary wooden door, and the woman behind it. The one who read Latin, who had been told to use the back entrance, who kept counting 3 years. The library was the quietest room in the Whitmore house. This was not a coincidence. Libraries are quiet. Books absorb silence. But this house's library was quiet in another way. An unused silence. The shelves were full, but most of the books had never been opened. Their spines were not faded, their pages not creased. They were there as decoration. Mara had understood this as a child, and what she understood as a child, she had corrected by claiming the library as her own. Early mornings, late evenings, when no one was there, sitting in front of the shelves, sometimes not even to read, just to be there. This room was hers. Not officially, but it was. It was the afternoon of the second day. Mara was examining a shelf, not looking for something new, just wanting to look, running her finger along the spines. A Greek volume, a history atlas. Her father had bought these. He had said it many times, books are the best place money is spent, Mara. She smiled. The door opened. Callum entered. Mara lifted her finger and turned. Callum stopped, saw Mara, and was surprised, though he did not fully hide it. I disturbed you, he said. No, said Mara. Callum walked in, looked at the shelves, and went to the left, the politics section, Mara knew. He searched for something, found it, a thick, dark-covered book, and turned to leave. Mara spoke before she had planned to. That book is in Latin, she said. Callum stopped and looked. I know, he said. Mara shrugged. I just wanted to say. Callum held the book, then went to the table and sat. Opened it. Mara turned back to the shelf, found her own book, and sat in the chair opposite. They began reading in silence. 10 minutes passed. Callum spoke without lifting his eyes from the page. Have you finished Agricola? Mara thought. I am reading it for the second time, she said. There are things I miss on the first reading. Callum turned the page. What did you miss? Mara looked up from her book. The way Tacitus describes Agricola. He tells a hero, but at the same time he criticizes a system, both at once. Callum paused, left the page, and looked at Mara. "Which system?" he asked. "Rome," said Mara. "The Empire. Agricola does everything right. He has victories, he has honor, but the system uses him. And in the end—" She stopped. "Continue," said Callum. "In the end, the system consumes him," said Mara. "Agricola knows this, but continues anyway, because he does not know what else to do." The room fell silent. Callum looked at his book, then back at Mara. "Is that why you read it a second time? To understand that conclusion?" Mara paused for a second. "No," she said. "To come to terms with it."
They stayed in the library until evening that day, talking through books, through history. Callum asked, Mara answered. Mara asked, Callum answered. And Callum realized this woman argued. She truly argued. When she disagreed, she said it. When she was right, she did not celebrate. When she was wrong, she admitted it. No one in that house spoke like this. Agatha spoke, but the conclusions were predetermined. Cecily and Arabella spoke, but they agreed with whatever Callum said. Mara did not agree. Callum said something about Tacitus, something incorrect, small but incorrect, and Mara corrected him. Her voice was neither harsh nor apologetic, just flat. "No," she said, "that's not it. It's this." And she was right. Callum laughed, unexpected, unplanned. Mara was surprised and did not fully hide it. Callum tried to remember the last time he had laughed. He could not. Before dinner, Agatha found Mara in the kitchen. Agatha entered, closed the door, and smiled. "You were in the library with the Duke this afternoon?" she asked. "Yes," Mara answered. Agatha's smile did not change, but her eyes did. "That is not appropriate," she said. "The Duke is here for Cecily and Arabella. You—" She stopped. Mara waited. "You should be less visible in this process. Do you understand?" Mara understood, as she always did. "Yes," she said. Agatha left. Mara placed her hand on the counter, still and unmoving. 3 years, she whispered. Not to anyone. The next morning, Mara was in the garden, early as always. The air was cold but clear, one of those short, sharp November mornings. She heard footsteps. Callum entered through the garden gate, saw Mara, and stopped. "You wake early too," she said. Callum walked closer and stood beside her. "I couldn't sleep," he said. Mara nodded. "It's hard to sleep in a new place. The sounds of the house are unfamiliar. Which floorboard creaks, which window rattles in the wind. It takes time to learn." Callum looked at her. "When did you learn?" Mara thought. "I never did," she said. "This house never felt familiar to me." Callum carried that sentence through the rest of the day. At lunch while Arabella played, in the evening while Cecily spoke. Mara served, stepped back, became invisible. But Callum saw her, and as he saw her, something grew inside him, not anger yet, but discomfort, the sense that something was wrong, something he could not name, but that kept growing. That night he sat in his room. The family's plan was clear. Agatha was clear. Cecily and Arabella were clear. Mara wanted nothing from him, expected nothing, offered nothing. That was strange. And strange things had always fascinated Callum. It took him 2 more days to admit that to himself. On the 4th day, it rained. Starting early, thin and persistent, the kind of rain like Yorkshire rain. The garden closed, everyone stayed inside, and being inside in that house meant one thing. Everyone saw each other. Agatha used this deliberately. At breakfast, Cecily played the piano. Before noon, Arabella recited French poetry. In the afternoon, the two embroidered together, side by side, silently, with elegant hand movements. Everything was arranged. Everything was in its place. Callum watched and grew bored. This was not an accusation. Cecily played well. Arabella read properly. But everything was so prepared that watching it was tiring. It was like a theater, curtains and stage and memorized lines. Callum saw the actors, not the characters. In the afternoon, he withdrew to the library. Mara was there. This time, Callum was not surprised. He no longer was. Mara sat by the window, the rain striking the glass, a book in her lap. But she was not reading. She was looking outside. Callum entered and closed the door. Mara turned, looked, then turned back to the window. Callum sat in the chair opposite. That familiar silence remained, not heavy, not empty, simply full. Callum spoke. "Will you tell me about your father?" Mara turned, surprised, not completely hiding it. "Why?" Callum thought. "Because his traces are everywhere in this house," he said. "The books, the garden, but no one speaks of him." Mara looked at him. "Agatha does not," she said. "My father was a secondary character in her story." Callum said nothing. Mara continued, her voice flat but with something in it, old and settled, no longer painful but still leaving a mark. "He was a good man," she said. "He loved books, he loved the garden, and he loved me. Not in that order, but all three are true." Callum listened. "When he taught me Latin, he always said this: 'You are not learning the language, Mara. You are learning how to think. The language is only a tool.'" She paused. "He was right. I understood later how right he was." At that moment, Callum said something he had not planned. It came out the way things fell from his mouth without thinking. "That day," he said, "the first day, when you entered through the kitchen door." Mara waited. "Do you know what I said?" "Who is this?" said Mara. "Yes." Callum looked at the table. "I am sorry," he said.
The room fell silent. Mara looked at him for a long second. Then she spoke. "Why are you saying this?" she asked. "Truly." Callum looked at her. "Because it was wrong," he said. "Simply, it was wrong." Mara said nothing. Callum continued. "And you said you are used to it. That—" he began, then stopped. "That makes it worse." Mara turned to the window. The rain was still striking the glass. "Being used to something does not mean it is good," she said. "It just means being realistic." Callum looked at her. "No," he said. "Being used to this, to things like this, is unacceptable. For you, for anyone." Mara turned and looked at Callum with that straight, measuring, calculating gaze. "You must be used to many things," she said. "Just different ones." Callum took that sentence. It was true, and objecting to truth was not his habit. At least, that was what he believed. "Yes," he said, "you are right." That evening, Agatha called Callum to the small sitting room, the fireplace lit, tea prepared. She sat across from him and smiled. "I hope everything is satisfactory," she said. "Have my daughters been able to host you well?" Callum nodded. "Everything is fine." Agatha continued. "Cecily is very talented, especially in music, and Arabella, her progress in languages is truly impressive." Callum listened. Then Agatha added something, her voice unchanged, but with something in it, calculated and placed. "I heard you spent time in the library with Mara. She stopped and smiled. "Lives in her own world. She is part of our family, of course, but how shall I put it? Different." Callum looked at her. "Different?" Agatha waved her hand. "I only meant that she is not a suitable companion for a duke. I wanted to say it kindly." Callum said nothing. Agatha continued. "Tomorrow I have arranged a special program for Cecily. Perhaps—" Callum stood. "Thank you," he said. "Good night," and left. Agatha remained by the fireplace, her smile frozen. Callum walked down the corridor and stopped. There was a sound from the back stairs, low, repetitive, small. Footsteps. Mara's footsteps. He recognized them now. Everyone in that house had a different step. She was going to the kitchen. Late on a rainy evening, Callum thought. then walked toward the back stairs. In the kitchen, Mara stood at the counter working. Flour, butter, small movements. Callum stood in the doorway. At first, Mara did not fear him. Then she turned and saw him and was surprised. Callum stepped inside. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Bread," said Mara. "For tomorrow." Callum sat at the table. Out of habit, the kitchen table had begun to feel familiar. Mara continued her work quietly while Callum watched. Then he asked, "Did Agatha tell you to use the back entrance?" Mara's hands stopped, then continued. "Who told you?" she asked. "No one," said Callum. "But I have never seen you use the front door." Mara said nothing. Callum continued. "And at dinner, you served, as a daughter of this house." Mara turned. "In this house, everyone has a place," she said. "This is mine." Callum looked at her. "No," he said. "This is not the place of a daughter of this house." Mara stood there, hands dusted with flour, looking at him. "This is not your concern," she said. Callum stood. "Maybe not," he said. "But once you see something, it is hard to ignore it." He walked to the door and stopped. "Tacitus," he said. "Agricola, the man who criticizes the system, but is forced to remain inside it." Mara waited. Callum turned, standing in the doorway. "You are doing the same," he said. "But Agricola had one difference. There was no way out. You have one." Mara said nothing. Callum left. Mara turned back to the counter. Her hands began to work again, but slower now, more thoughtful. And something inside her moved. Small, quiet, something that had been asleep for a long time. On the 5th day, the sun came out. The rain had passed, the air had cleared, the garden was wet and bright. Mara went outside early, as she always did, at the same hour. But this morning she was thinking differently. Callum's words turned in her mind. A way out, he had said, as if he knew whether Mara wanted a way out, whether she even allowed herself to see one. He did not know. He could not. But the word was there, and it remained. Before noon, Callum came to the library. Mara was placing books on the shelf and turned. Callum sat at the table with papers in his hand, written and filled. "What is that?" Mara asked. "My notes," said Callum. "On Tacitus. I thought about what you said last night." Mara was surprised. She sat, took the paper and read. Callum waited. Mara's face did not change while reading. That was her habit. She did not reveal much outwardly, but her eyes moved quickly, line to line. She finished and placed the paper down. "You are wrong. In the second paragraph." Callum looked. "Where?" Mara pointed. "When you explain Agricola's relationship with the system, he is not passive. There is active resistance, but invisible resistance. The distinction matters." Callum looked and thought. "Can you explain?" he asked.
Mara explained, and they talked, truly talked for over an hour. Callum objected, Mara defended. Mara objected, Callum considered. No one was speaking to win, only to understand. This felt strange to Callum, in a good way. At dinner, Agatha asked something from across the table in that sweet voice. "I thought of a plan for tomorrow," she said. "A ride with Cicely, if the weather holds. Will you join?" Callum nodded. "Perhaps." Agatha smiled. Then she added, "I meant to ask, are you engaged, Mara? A neighbor seemed to think so." Everyone froze. Mara looked at her plate, then at Agatha. "No," she said, "I am not." Agatha raised her eyebrows.
"I am surprised," she said. "I must have been mistaken." The subject ended, but Callum looked at Agatha, then at Mara. Mara's face was flat, out of habit, but her hands tightened briefly in her lap. Callum saw it. That evening, Callum found Mara in the garden. It was getting dark, but she was still outside. Callum stepped out and walked to her. Mara heard him, but did not turn. Callum stopped. "Are you engaged?" he asked. Mara turned and looked. "No," she said. "I already said that." Callum continued. "Why did Agatha say it?" Mara paused for a second. "Because it suited her," she said, simply. Callum understood completely. Something tightened inside him, not anger yet, but its precursor, the clear knowledge that something was wrong. Mara was about to turn away. Callum spoke. "I see what is being done to you in this house," he said. Mara stopped. The back entrance, serving at dinner, the lie about an engagement. These are small things separately, but together. Mara turned. Her face was flat, but her eyes held something, not tiredness, something sharper. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "Say it." Callum waited. Mara continued. "Because you have seen this house, this family, and now you see my situation, and there is a difference between seeing and acting." Callum looked at her. "You are right," he said. Mara waited. "I do not yet know what I will do," Callum continued, "but I cannot ignore it." Mara looked at him for a long time, then turned and went inside. Callum remained in the garden. It was dark now, the lights of the house on, the drawing room, the kitchen, the upstairs rooms. He named what was turning inside him. It was anger, real and clean and direct. But beneath the anger there was something else, softer, less defined, more dangerous. The next morning, Callum found Agatha early, before she was fully prepared. He had calculated this, knowing it would unsettle her slightly. "We need to talk," he said. Agatha composed herself and smiled. "Of course, please." Callum did not sit. "Mara," he said, "her position in this house." Agatha's smile remained, but her eyes changed. "Mara is a very good girl, sometimes a little. She uses the back entrance."
She serves at dinner. Last night you said she was engaged. A lie. Agatha opened her mouth. Callum did not stop. "She is a daughter of this house, Robert Whitmore's daughter, and she is treated like a servant." Agatha's voice cooled. "This is a family matter," she said. "For an outsider," Callum cut in, "I am a guest in this house, and I take note of what I see." Agatha looked at him. "What are you implying?" Callum answered, flat, clear, not open to argument. "Mara will be treated equally in this house from now on. If that cannot be ensured, I will have to reconsider whether this visit continues." The room fell silent. Something passed over Agatha's face. Anger, fear, calculation, rapid, one after another. Then she smiled. "Of course," she said. "There must have been a misunderstanding. We will correct everything for Mara." Callum nodded, turned, and left. That day at lunch, Mara sat at the table. She did not serve. She sat like everyone else, her plate in front of her. Agatha's face was flat. Cecily and Arabella glanced at each other. Callum said nothing, but once during the meal he looked at Mara. Mara looked back and understood. Something small and brief and almost unnoticeable happened on her face. Not exactly gratitude, something more sincere than that. That evening, Mara was sitting in the library when Callum came. He sat across from her.
I spoke with Agatha, he said. I know, said Mara. I understood at lunch. Callum nodded. Then Mara said something unplanned, unexpected. Why? She asked. Truly, what is the benefit for you? Callum thought. There is no benefit, he said. It was simply the right thing. Mara looked at him. On the first day you said, "Who is this?" she said. Today, this. Callum looked back. People change, he said. Mara paused for a second. Some do, she said, and opened her book. Callum opened his as well. They sat in silence. And that silence, full and safe and trying to prove nothing, was the most real thing in that large house.
On the morning of the 7th day, Callum woke early and sat in his room thinking. This visit had lasted a week. In that week, he had listened to Cecily. She played well. He had listened to Arabella. She spoke properly. He had seen Agatha's plan, clear and calculated and functional. And he had seen Mara. Callum placed his hands on the table, still. He needed to be honest with himself. That was his habit, even when it was difficult, especially when it was difficult. He had come for Cecily or Arabella. That was clear. And now what was not clear was this. When he left, who he would be thinking about. He knew the answer. It had taken less than a week, and it was not logical. Callum was a logical man, but some things came before logic. That morning Mara was in the garden, where she always was, in that corner, at that hour. Callum entered through the garden gate. Mara heard him and turned. They looked at each other. Callum walked closer and stopped beside her. You are leaving, said Mara. Tomorrow? Yes, said Callum. Mara nodded, her expression closed, not revealing. Callum spoke. I want to ask you something, he said. Directly. Mara waited. Would you like to leave this house? Mara paused for a second. Every day, she said. Callum looked at her. I want to leave this house too, he said. But not alone. Mara looked at him for a long time. This is very fast, she said. I know, said Callum. 1 week, said Mara. I know, said Callum. But in a week, some things become clear, and some do not. I'm speaking of the ones that are clear. Mara looked at the garden, the wet grass, the distant trees, the boundaries of this house. Have you given up your pride? She asked. Callum thought, truly thought. I'm working on it, he said. Mara laughed, unexpected, real, unguarded, surprising even herself. And she showed it, did not hide it. Callum watched. He had not heard that laugh before, not in the library, not in the kitchen, nowhere. It was the first. And first things always stayed with Callum, in some corner of his mind, so they would not be lost. Mara spoke. I have 3 years, she said, until my inheritance. From my father. I know, said Callum. Mara looked at him. She did not ask if he had investigated. The answer was obvious. I cannot wait those 3 years. Why? Mara asked. Callum answered honestly, as he always did. Because I do not want to leave you here, he said. And because he began, then stopped. Go on, Mara said. Because I spent a week in this house, said Callum. And the only real part of that week was you. They were in the garden, but the silence closed around them like a room. Mara looked at him. That is very honest, she said. Callum nodded. A habit, he said.
Mara said something slowly, carefully, every word weighed. Let me tell you something, she said. That first day, when I came in through the kitchen door, do you know what I thought when I saw you? No, said Callum. Mara looked at him. I thought, this man will leave in a week, she said, and it will be a good thing when he does, because men like this always leave. Callum listened. But, Mara continued, then paused. A week passed, and you were something unexpected. Callum looked at her. In what sense? Mara thought. You see, she said. You truly see. That is rare. That afternoon, Agatha was sitting in the drawing room with Cecily beside her and Arabella opposite. Callum entered. All three looked at him. Callum spoke directly, without hesitation. I have made my decision. Agatha leaned forward, her eyes brightening. Not Cecily or Arabella, Callum continued. They are both suitable young women. But this week, I spoke to someone else. Silence. Agatha's face froze. Mara, said Callum. I spoke with Mara Whitmore, and it is with her that I wish to proceed. Cecily said something, startled, unfinished. Arabella said nothing. Agatha stood up. This is impossible. Mara is this family's... Callum cut her off. She is the true daughter of this house, he said. Robert Whitmore's daughter. And she is my choice. Agatha opened her mouth. Callum continued, his voice turning cold. That familiar coldness, but this time used for someone else. Mara's inheritance will pass to her in 3 years. Until then, I would like to see her situation in this house improved. That is something that can be monitored legally. Agatha looked at him, then sat down. She said nothing. That evening, Mara was in the kitchen when Callum came in and sat at the table. Mara turned. You spoke with Agatha, she said. Did you know? Yes, said Callum. Mara said nothing. I will leave tomorrow, Callum continued, but I will return. In 2 weeks, if you allow it. Mara looked at him. You said you were working on your pride, she said. Yes, said Callum. How long will that take? Callum thought. I do not know, he said, but when I notice it, I will tell you. Mara laughed, the same laugh, real and unexpected. All right, she said.
2 years later, Callum Voss's house was large. Its library was larger, and on the lowest shelf of that library, beside the other books, not in a special place, just an ordinary place, sat Tacitus's Agricola. 2 copies, one Callum's, one Mara's. Both had been opened, their pages creased, their margins marked with notes, certain lines underlined, the markings of different hands. One day they had a guest, an old acquaintance of Callum's from London. At dinner he sat at the table with Mara opposite. They talked, history, politics, the matters of the age. The guest was intelligent, Callum knew that, but at the end of the evening the guest turned to Callum. Your wife, he said, very sharp. Callum looked at Mara. At that moment she was discussing something with the guest's wife, quietly but explaining with her hands, in that old habit she had inherited from her father. Yes, said Callum. The guest continued. Where did you meet? Callum thought. At a kitchen door, he said. The guest was surprised. What do you mean? Callum smiled. It is a long story, he said. That night, after everyone had gone, Mara went to the library. Callum followed. Mara was looking at the shelf and she took out Tacitus and ran her finger over the spine. Callum came to stand beside her. What are you thinking about? He asked. Mara held the book. Agricola, she said. He had to make peace with the system. There was no way out. Callum looked at her. Mara continued. I found one, she said. The way out. Callum looked at her. Through the kitchen door? He asked. Mara laughed. Exactly, she said. Through the kitchen door. And that dress, that plain dress dusted with flour, the kitchen dress she had worn that day, was still at the very back of the wardrobe. Mara had never thrown it away. One day Callum had asked, Why did you keep it? Mara had answered, Because everything began that day. Without that dress, you would never have seen me.
Callum had looked at her. "I would have seen you," he had said. "It just would have taken longer." Mara had laughed. And the kitchen dress had gone back into the wardrobe, hidden away, preserved, not forgotten. Because some things looked small, but they were the beginning, and beginnings are never forgotten. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.